If what I believe to be true about me ultimately is created in my reality and reflected back to me, what would I love to be true for me? It doesn't need to take you 6 months or a year or 10 years to rewire your thinking patterns. You can just make the decision right now that I didn't choose these truths. They were observed by me and adopted by me, but not chosen by me. And now I am consciously aware and I get to choose a new truth for myself. So that's reflected back to me in my reality. And it might take a second, but I'm going to decide today that this gets to be true for me. Because if it's true for Joe Schmo, then it can be true for me, right? If what's true for Maddie now is showing up in her life, then it can certainly be true for me. I just decided. Just decided.
My dad is 83 years young. Every morning, he sends my sister and I and all his grandchildren a good morning message. It's always something uplifting, positive, and encouraging. And it always says, I love you. We all look forward to this, and we know that Granddad won't be around forever. So we really cherish these messages of love and empowerment. My dad loves to say, every day is a new opportunity. And that is what he taught me. That, along with how to work smarter, hold family dear, and go after my dreams. I know there are people out there who go through the motions every day with no one saying good morning, no encouraging word, and to support a positive mindset. And there are others who are doing all the right things, but still need a little nudge to create and maintain positive habits throughout the day. So in my dad's honor, I've created Your Positive Moment. Research clearly shows the benefits of positivity and connection. A recent Gallup poll showed a significant percentage of the world is lonely. Your Positive Moment solves these problems. These are messages that come directly to your phone first thing in the morning, so you can begin every day on a high note. The message includes a loving greeting, an affirmation, a daily reflection, and an easy action step to get you going in the direction of growth and fulfillment and transformation, and to help you stack up good habits. A simple daily message has the power to change your life. Get started with your beneficial morning message habit for free. yourpositivemoment.com. Welcome back to Blessings, friends. Today's guest is one of the lucky ones who work directly with the icon, Bob Proctor. Madison Rose is the young queen of manifestation. She has curated a lifestyle full of what we all want: money, love, happiness, a beautiful home, and even an adorable French bulldog. I know that's on my list. She's deliriously happy after marrying the man of her dreams this year, and now she's expecting a baby. She seems to have it all, but she's also experienced unbelievable heartbreak as well. It's not that she's immune to the ups and downs of life, but she knows how to take control of her mind and harness the energy and power of aligning intentions, beliefs, and actions to fulfill her desires. And she is generously going to share that knowledge with us today. Welcome, Madison. I'm so happy you're here today.
Hi, Mitzi. I might have to take that. That was the best intro I've ever heard of myself. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. This is one of my favorite things to do is just have a chat about life and the journey.
That's right. That's what it's all about. And that's how we learn.
Amen.
I love it.
Yeah.
All right.
I told
So
God this year, I don't need any more things to jump over. I can just receive answers now. I'm good for a little while.
conversations with God, my favorite. I've been having a lot of them myself lately.
Yeah, it's a daily practice.
It is. It is. And we'll talk about that. But first, I wanted to tell you that I'm so happy for you that you're expecting a beautiful baby girl, right?
Yep.
Yes. So, how have you been experiencing pregnancy? How does it feel to you being
I
pregnant?
love being pregnant. I love it. The first 12 weeks were a little bit rocky. Entrepreneurship and pregnancy is interesting for sure, especially when you're the face of your company. But after that, we got married actually on May 3rd. I was 10 weeks pregnant and no one knew. And 10 weeks out for our wedding, we found out we were pregnant. And I was like, I guess I'm walking down the aisle with a baby in my belly, and lots of prayers and affirmation that I was going to have no symptoms. And I didn't. I felt great. We went and honeymooned in Maui, Hawaii, one of our favorite places. And I felt great there. And I felt great ever since. So now I'm just stretching and getting bigger, but we feel good.
That's so great. I love it.
Yeah.
I think pregnancy is such a magical time. It puts you in touch with things that you don't normally think about. Is there something that you're considering about life or some kind of revelation you've had during your pregnancy?
That's a good question. I think the biggest thing has been entering into the perspective of my parents when they had me, and appreciating them so much more, and being able to see myself through their eyes now that I am about to have a daughter, knowing how I'm going to see her and how I already feel about her. You grow up hearing your parents, hopefully, or maybe, or your guardian say things like, you could do no wrong, or I love you no matter what. Or I remember my dad, when I was little, he would always write me these long sentimental messages about how much he loved me. And I'd be like, oh my God, Dad. But now I get it. It's cliche what they say, when you have a baby, you'll understand. But there truly has been so many things about my mom and dad that I have a new perspective on and appreciate a lot more having a baby in my belly now.
I love hearing that. And I'm sure your mom is going to be an amazing grandmother. She's probably over the moon.
She is so excited. She's going to go by Glamma, Glama, Glamma,
I
Glammy.
love that.
Oh,
I
yeah.
love that. That is
Yeah.
amazing. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. All right. So a lot of people might look at you because you have a big presence online. You're on Instagram, you're TikTok, and a lot of people might look at that and see this beautiful influencer kind of mentor with confidence, poise, and this dream life. But what is it that people don't see about you?
One of my best friends who now works inside Shiro's now actually said this to me the other day. She said, Maddie, I've known you since we were little girls. I've known you since we were 4 and 5 years old at daddy daughter dances at elementary school. And she said, when you go to your page and all your stuff now, people don't know that about you anymore. It seems so far away. Like, it's people don't know that. And so people might think that you're living this life and you've married this NFL player and you're like, things are just handed to you, which is, but I got to see that things weren't handed to you. People probably don't understand that my journey started 10 years ago when I was 18 years old. I was shy. I had really little confidence. I was in toxic relationships throughout high school, the normal drama that every teenage girl might go through. I did not know what I wanted to do for a career. I did not really believe in myself too much in the sense of entrepreneurship. I had no idea what entrepreneurship really was, what it entailed. I didn't know what I wanted to do in college, what I wanted to declare as my major. I had no idea. So I started out really normal, like everybody else, with normal problems and big dreams, but no idea how they would ever be accomplished, and still hoping that they would somehow be accomplished.
Yeah.
So I would say most people probably they don't see that now because we're 10 years in, and yeah, my life is now a reflection of 10 years of whatever you want to call it, personal development, experience, and not giving up, really.
The thing I admire most about you is that you got started on this so young that now at your age, so I guess you're 20, 28.
28, just
Okay.
turned 28. Mhm.
At your age, I was your age when I had my first child too. And I was nowhere even close to what you're doing. It wasn't even on my radar. I think these days, entrepreneurship is on the radar of a lot more young people. And so I just admire that because now you have put yourself in this position where you have an advantage. You have so much because you've spent that time working hard to get to this place. And you realize that in some level in your body, you realize that you were setting yourself up for something or you wanted to achieve something. And I just admire that so much. What's your advice to people like your age or young people who are looking to position themselves like you have?
I was very blessed with the father that God gave me. My dad got me into network marketing as soon as I turned 18. which I was like I did not want to do. It was an energy company. I had zero passion or interest in it. But my dad was like, I just joined this thing. He was going from traditional entrepreneurship to virtual entrepreneurship, really like digital, and joining a network marketing company. I turned 18. He said, okay, you're 18. You can have your own business. You can open your own business. And I was like, what do you mean? He's, yep, we're doing this thing together. He really gave me no choice, honestly. And I'm so blessed that he didn't, because that sparked everything. We'd go to network marketing conferences, and obviously there'd be personal development at those conferences because network marketing is very heavy personal development based. That's where we bumped into Bob Proctor together when I was 21, I think at that point. I was 21 when we met Bob. And so I started to listen to personal development, specifically Jim Rohn.
Mm.
Actually, I had a God, I feel so old now, but I remember my first personal development anything was actually a Jim Rohn CD. It was a 4 series CD. And that was very normal. I had a CD case on above my car with all these personal development CDs, and I put it in my car. My car doesn't even have a CD player anymore. And I would listen to Jim Rohn, and I just started to understand that there are two different kinds of people in the world, truly. There are the people who get up and get after it, and there's the people that don't. And I started to see and understand that it wasn't all that hard to become a person who got up and got after it, but it was rare, and that I was going to be different, and that I may not fit in with the normal crowd at a young age, especially in college and stuff. And I was okay with that. Something in me as a little girl just knew that going the way of the masses, and I had heard this in so many personal development books and CDs and things, that going the way of the masses was not the way to create something significant in life. And I decided very early on, and knew very early on, that I only had one shot at life, as far as we know, and that I was not going to waste time worrying about what other people thought about my journey, because I did not want the lives that they had. And I don't know what made me realize that. It was probably a combination of having my dad to be a strong support system in terms of personal development. It was just me and my dad, no friends, family. Other than that, we were like a little bubble, and some inner light within me that I believe everybody has, that I just didn't blow out.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is really all about what you expose yourself to. And the idea of you driving around listening to those tapes, those CDs, I said tapes.
Cassette tapes. Yeah, no, not there.
I know. For me, it would have been tapes.
Yeah.
But I think that's really the difference. It's what you decide to bring into your life. And you made a decision early on, thankfully, with your dad as an influence, to listen to that instead of doing whatever your friends were doing.
I
And it,
remember when I was going to college, I had a 10-hour drive to Kent State in Ohio, where I chose to go to school. And I would listen to personal development all the way there and all the way back.
that's
Yeah.
crazy. That's what I do now. I wasn't doing it at your age, and I
Yeah.
wasn't doing it at 18 and 21. I was in the weeds. I was doing whatever my friends were doing. And it does make a difference. It's really wonderful that you had that realization at that age. So cool. So you're meeting Bob Proctor at 21. And then what happened in terms of being in his world after that?
We were at a convention in Vegas, and my dad and I were sitting with each other. Bob got on the stage, and I'll never forget, he started talking about the mind body connection as it relates to human potential and success. And for the one of the first times in my life, I just started to hear personal development in a different way. That clicked. I was raised to be very left brained, although I am very right brained innately. I was raised to be very left because my dad was an engineer. My dad loved breaking things down, like very practical, step by step vibe. And so when my dad and I heard Bob start talking about the science of the mind, my perception of personal development went from this stuff is fun to listen to and feels good to listen to hold on, there's actually a blueprint where I can create my own reality. Because up until meeting Bob, I had just been listening and hoping that it was like somehow working. But I
Mhm.
didn't know how to make it work for me. I did not know how to change myself yet. I just was obsessed with learning and being like in a sponge mode. But I didn't know how to change me in order to change my life. I did not know. And so Bob talks about taking energy from nothing and turning it into something. And the same way the iPhone was created, you can create your dreams. And if you can see it in your mind, you can hold it in your hand. And my dad and I were just like glued to the stage, like, what? This is incredible. As the first time we had ever heard him or heard of him was at that point.
You're giving me chills because I think this is the mistake a lot of people make, or the stumbling block that a lot of people come upon is they're in sponge mode. They're listening to all the stuff, they're hearing it, they're believing it, they're absorbing it, but they're not doing whatever it is that moves the needle, that flips you to the other side of it. So what is it? What are they missing?
Do you want me to go
Yeah,
through it?
go.
Okay.
What are they missing?
Yeah,
What do we need
free
to
reign?
do? Tell us what we need to do.
Yeah. I think the first step, and just going off cuff here, the first step for anyone brand new to this world is to first really have a solid meeting with themselves. And obviously now I'm teaching it over 10 years of experience. So the way I heard it then and the way I'm going to tell you now is definitely going to be different, but hopefully a little bit more modern or better, maybe. The first thing I would say is they've got to sit down and have a solid meeting with themselves and take inventory of what they are currently deciding to be true for themselves and their life. The way that Bob had explained it to us back then was, what are your paradigms? He would
Mhm.
say, you've got to know what your paradigm is. You've got to know, which he would say a paradigm is a mental set of programs stored in your subconscious mind, controlling almost all of your habitual behavior. And 96% of your behavior is habitual. That's like dictionary textbook from Bob Proctor. Now, the way that I have come to know it is you've got to know yourself. It doesn't really matter what's in your subconscious mind. You don't need to go trying to figure out what all your paradigms are, but you do need to know what you're deciding to be true for you right now. And that's a very easy thing to do. You just sit and you say, okay, what do I believe to be true for me about money?
Mm.
What do I believe to be true for me about what I can get out of relationships? Do I believe relationships are easy? Do I believe they're hard? Do I believe that fairy tales exist? Do I not? What do I believe about relationships? What do I believe about money? What do I believe about love? What do I believe about children? What do I believe about business, success? What do I believe about what's possible for me, really? Because that's going to tell you a lot about what your consciousness or psyche right now, what your person is manifesting into your life. And you might write pages and pages about this. And it's really interesting because you start to get to know yourself on a different level. And you might start thinking things like, where did I decide that this is true for me?
Mm.
I remember doing this in terms of marriage for the first time. What do I believe to be true about marriage? And what came out of me was marriage ends in divorce because I had seen it so many times. That marriage was a jail sentence,
Mm.
that marriage was hard and bumpy, that you should never get married because you're probably not going to be happy and it's going to end in divorce anyway. Those are my truths around marriage. Why would I ever want to get married? That's step one. Step two is also just very simple. You can just look at them and say, if what I believe to be true about me ultimately is created in my reality and reflected back to me, what would I love to be true for me? It doesn't
Mm.
need to take you 6 months or a year or 10 years to rewire your thinking patterns. You can just make the decision right now that I didn't choose these truths. They were observed by me and adopted by me, but not chosen by me. And now I am consciously aware and I get to choose a new truth for myself. So that's reflected back to me in my reality. And it might take a second, but I'm going to decide today that this gets to be true for me. Because if it's true for Joe Schmo, then it can be true for me, right? If what's true
Yeah.
for Maddie now is showing up in her life, then it can certainly be true for me. I just decided. Just decided. Now, the first 5 to 6 years of my personal development journey, I did not have this level of awareness. And I was doing things like writing my goal down a million times on a piece of paper or listening to the same audio over and over and over and over again, using the spaced repetition of content, which Bob Proctor taught us, which does work, but it implies that there's a very long process that has to take place in order for you to change. And what I want to share today is that it doesn't need to take that long.
Mhm.
It can just be a decision, a line in the sand moment where you're like, no, I'm tired of creating this because I never even chose it. So now I'm going to choose this for myself. The third step that I would say that's just coming to me now, I was only going to give you two, but I think there definitely is three. The third one would be to realize and recognize where the adopted truth came from. And if I could backtrack, you should do this second. Where did it come from, right? So write down your truths. What is the earliest memory that you can recall where this was ingrained or planted within you, right? Sown into you. For example, with marriage, the earliest one would be just me never seeing my parents together married, ever. Me seeing my mom go through a tragic divorce when I was 7. I never wanted to go through that. And then understanding that my mom had the awareness that she had at that time, which is definitely different than the awareness that I now have. I am a different person. I am not my mom. My mom didn't know better. My mom was just creating the reality that she had adopted from her childhood. And then that did not happen to her, that the world didn't happen to her. That was something that she created unknowingly. And I don't have to create the same thing. I am free from it. It is hers, it is not mine. And then step 3 is if anything can be true and reflected back to me, then what do I want? And this is the hardest step. What do I want? What do I want to be true for me? And then you get to have fun and declare it. I wanted a fairy tale love. I saw them in movies and I was like, no, they exist. Like, I want to be swept off my feet. I deserve a man that earns more than me, is better than me, it works out harder than me, chases after life harder than I do. I'm tired of pulling. I deserve a man that challenges me. And I got to decide that for myself. And that was hard to do because I had watched so many women in my life be the ones to pull the men or be the masculine energy out of a relationship. And that was my truth for a very long time. And that's what I got until I was fed up and decided to do this process and made the decision no, I'm going to date no one. I'm going to date God. And if God does not show me a man that feels just like my relationship with God or better, then I'm fine with never getting married. But I'm not going to settle into something that, like a pattern that I've seen people in that I know doesn't need to be true for me. So there we
Wow.
have it.
Oh my God. Thank you for that. That's amazing. And I, gosh, the self-awareness piece really, I think, is where a lot of people get stuck. Like they get stuck in that and then they don't take that third step, that step 3, which is what you're saying is the hardest step, but that's really where the magic happens, right?
Once you
And
make
then
a
to,
decision,
yeah,
everything starts to align with that decision.
yeah.
And
And
most people
it's,
don't make the decision because they're afraid of pain.
oh, so true. It strikes me that when you did your step 3, you made
Mhm.
the decision and then you left it up to God.
Oh, yeah.
So that almost feels like a step 4, like detaching from it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
detachment, and I can tell a story about that when I met my husband. It was only 16 or 17 months ago. It was January of 2023, and I wouldn't have met him without my dad. Just funny, my dad's just like a common theme throughout my whole life. I truly believe God gave me him as a guide and mentor early in life for a reason. But when I met Dalton, I was at a place where I was 25, I was 26. I really wanted to get married. I really wanted to have babies. I felt this maternal, innate feeling inside me that was like really wanting this. And at the same time, the relationship that I was in at the time, I would have never entered into a marriage. And so I had to get honest with myself and bring myself through this process. If I still want this to be true for me, that fairy tales do exist and there is a man out there that will help me feel these feelings and make me more of myself, then I've got to saddle up and walk out in faith. And so I prayed a prayer. I said, God, if the person in front of me is not meant for me, show me what is, because I'm never going to get married unless I have zero doubt, unless the relationship brings me closer to you, unless it makes me more of myself. And what I got back from God, and it wasn't like a booming voice, it was just an internal knowingness. And it was just speaking of like trust and bravery and stepping out in faith and believing and letting go of how this was supposed to all come together. And the challenge that I got back from God, or the call, was, are you willing to let go of your earthly dream to pursue my dream for you?
Mm.
And that was hard because as a woman, you might really want babies, you might really want marriage, I really wanted these things. And I was trying so hard to get them that I was forcing them to happen out of alignment. And I realized that finally when I hit a certain age and I had to hard check myself. And so I did. I let it go. I completely surrendered it to God and said, okay, if you've got a better plan out there for me, then I'll adopt the world as my children and I'll fall in love with you for the rest of my life. I guess I don't need a man and I don't need to have babies to live a fairy tale. I've got God and I've got my work to do with God, right? That could keep me busy forever. And I don't need a man to feel love. And so I did. I completely let it go, but I didn't stop wanting it. But
Mhm.
what did change when I let it go was that I started thinking about it from a place of, I have everything and this would be awesome.
Mm.
I have God. I have the best relationship in the world already. I don't need anything. So I stopped coming from a place of lack, like I don't have, I don't have, I don't have. I started feeling very complete with the Lord. And I started as a woman to just feel like, listen, if you don't measure up to my relationship with the Lord, then we've got no business here. And so it made me walk differently and operate from a place
Mm.
of overflow and love and
Mhm.
not desperation. And I met Dalton a month later.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It works though. It really works. And I
Yeah.
think when you feel that happen, if it can happen for you and you feel the way it feels, then you can understand not needing, and that kind of detachment with confidence that you already have everything that you quote need. But I love that. So good. You have a program right now that's called Opulent Hearts. You're running it. And
Yeah.
I thought this was just the best name for a program, first of all. And the idea that looking for love is something that everybody craves. Everybody wants that. And so many of us, like what you were just talking about, knowing that you were in a relationship, is what you were alluding to, that
So was he.
yeah. Okay. So
So
you were
was my
both,
husband.
but having the strength to say that you don't have to stay in a situation that you know is not serving you. And I think that takes a lot of courage, and that gives a lot of people permission. Like, I know that neither of you were married at the time, but this does happen to people who are married as well. And I know there's a line there, but it's very interesting to consider that idea that you might be in a situation, whether it's love or a job or whatever, that isn't feeling aligned, that you know is not meant for you, that and maybe something better does come along. What do you do in a situation like that? How do you reckon with that?
This is the number one question I get asked
Okay.
when it comes to love. And this is one that I have prayed about a lot because I am pro marriage. I do not believe in divorce. I do not believe that divorce is an option. However, there are lines that God creates for us. And I truly believe that the covenant of marriage, or the decision or the choice, the promise of marriage between two people, when broken by one party, I believe that there is a line there if broken. Infidelity, abuse, toxicity, like there are lines within the realm of marriage where marriage no longer makes sense. And I believe that God blesses divorce. And I'm not religious, although I talk about God a lot. I'm obsessed with him, but I'm not talking about this from a film of Christianity or Catholicism or anything. It's just what I've felt for the past 3 years, like super convicted when it comes to this stuff now because of my experience with marriage and meeting Dalton and God, my own individual relationship. And so in a situation like that, you have to be your number one guide. I think the most important thing is having and cultivating that relationship with God, whether you're religious, spiritual, what have you. You all have a direct line to source, to infinite intelligence, to God. I call him God, and I believe in Jesus Christ. And they have done me wonders in my life in terms of co-creating my reality with them as guides for me. God is your number one. Even in my marriage, God is still number one. And we always have permission, and we're always urged or challenged or encouraged is the word I'm looking for, to run everything by God. So in my marriage, instead of ever arguing with each other, it's what does God say about this? And it's not like we have to pull out a Bible. It's just when you develop a relationship with the Lord, you know when things are your mess to clean up, when things are someone else's mess that they've created that have nothing to do with you, and when it's your own insecurity that you need to overcome or your own communication skills that you need to work on. If you can be self-aware and have God as your sounding board, he becomes the CEO of your marriage. He's the CEO of my business, the CEO of my marriage. And yes, my husband is now my number one. However, God is our CEO together. Like we are one under God. And so I can't tell anyone what to do, right? Everyone's situations are unique and different. And there's a lot of people that enter marriages before they're self-aware, which I also realize. And so it's an individual journey, right? And there is nothing wrong. Everyone's journeys are different. I happened to be in a place where I was extremely self-aware before entering marriage, and I was never going to get married unless XYZ. And so here we are.
Yeah. And I'm divorced, and I totally agree. And I wish that I had that situation where I had the level of self-awareness to enter into marriage with a different frame of mind, a different level of maturity. But I didn't. And as I got to know myself, and then a big impact event in my life was losing my mom during that time. And there's something about experiencing something very tragic, especially a profound loss in your life, which causes you to reach a new level of self-awareness. And that can change the dynamics of your relationships. And it can show you misalignments. And then you have to make tough decisions. And
You do.
talking to God about it. I love that. And I did not have that kind of a relationship. But I think I did, because I think what you're talking about is like an inner knowing, like you're getting a message.
You are always right.
Yeah.
God is
Yes.
always speaking to you, and you're always right. If there's anything in your life that you've ever questioned and waited on to ponder or something, if you look back, like I was always right that the people were never meant for me because they weren't. I was always right. I questioned myself. And so it's the faster you can trust that voice inside you, call it God, call it your higher self, inner wisdom. I sometimes call her my wise woman, right? The faster you can learn to trust in that, even when the evidence of the other side is not in front of you, better off you're going to be. I truly do believe that. And then also, there's just the human experience, right? It's like we can't arrive and know all things and have no hurdles and have a good life. That's not what life is. And this is why it's the number one question, because there's no straightforward answer to it. Because life is a journey. We're meant to go through things, to learn things, to evolve over time. We're not meant to come here and be perfect and never muck it up. We're meant to go through it. That's why we're here. There's so much polarity in that question.
You're supposed to have challenges. You're supposed to face situations where you have to make those kinds of really hard decisions. And no matter which way you go, it's right. It's what's meant for you.
So
Because
long as
you're
it's moral,
meant to learn.
ethical, and legal.
Yes, disclaimer. Agree. But the idea that what happens in your life is happening for you, I know that's cliche. It really is, because you're meant to learn something from it.
Here's the thing that I realized as well, Mitzi, is that we don't really know if it's happening for us or not, right?
Okay.
But the belief that it is changes everything.
Yeah.
You don't need to know the science or the physics behind it. The belief that everything is working in your favor is the name of the game. When you decide that gets to be true for you, so this brings us back to the steps that we went over.
Yes.
When you decide that everything is working out for me and this is a truth of mine, that becomes the lens and the rose-colored goggles you start to see life through. And that becomes your reality. It becomes your truth. It becomes who you become, right?
Yep.
And who knows, one day we'll know me croak, right? But
We won't be able to tell
we
ourselves
can't
or
know
tell our
everything.
loved ones afterwards.
No, we don't know everything in the human body because if we did, there'd be no point of being human.
That's so true. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. It really blows your mind when you start going down the rabbit hole of the philosophical stuff. I love it. Oh my God. So you're in a season of bliss right now. You really are. But I want to talk a little bit about what this has followed. You had a season of tragedy before this period of your life. So can we talk a little bit about your dad?
Yeah.
You obviously have great love for him and you speak so highly of him. And I'm sorry I didn't get to meet him, but he was struggling behind the scenes. And
Yeah.
tell us the story.
Yeah. So you've already heard context of my father, one of the best guys you would have ever had the privilege of meeting, Mitzi. I'm sorry you didn't get to meet him, but you could probably tap into his energy. He's available all around
Okay.
us right now.
I'll do that.
Yeah. Dad, my parents got divorced when I was 2. I saw my dad every other weekend and every Wednesday. We'd go on dates, we'd go skiing together, we got our scuba diving license together. My dad was very much, and you've already heard this is a common theme. And as I'm speaking, it's 944, which is his number for me. I actually live in apartment 44 on the 44th floor. It's funny. Hi, Dad.
Hi, Dad.
Yeah,
I
hi.
felt him
Mitzi
too.
wants to chat.
I do.
Yeah. And so he was very much my guide and mentor, as you can see through my story. He led me to entrepreneurship. I would go to my dad to talk about girly things when I was younger because he was just a safe place to land. He was never judgmental. He was never critical of my decisions. He always gave me the information and trusted me to make my own choices or told me about experiences that he had and then allowed me to fumble around and learn for myself. Um, and so that led into entrepreneurship, that led into speaking on stages, that led into our business with Bob Proctor, where we spent 3 years traveling the world with Bob Proctor, building a personal development business, earning millions of dollars together as a father and daughter duo. Those 3 years from 21, 22, 23, 24, is 21 to 24 for me, were just seriously some of the best years of my life that I got with my dad. And I know that they were the best years of his life for sure. Private jets, first class, helping people, serving people, speaking, hanging out with the top of the top in the personal development industry. Just so incredible. And as I got older, my personal development journey, I just became obsessed with this stuff. And I more so became obsessed with becoming it and having it in my life and being it. My biggest fear was that I would know a lot, but not be a lot. And so I became very obsessed with integrating everything that I was learning into me and me being my number one experiment for personal development.
Oh.
In other words, I wanted to transform myself. No one could deny it. Like, whoa, what the heck happened to her? And so as I started to do that, I realized that when you do that, there are hard decisions that you bump into because when you are going from one version of reality to the next, when you are accessing an alternate reality for yourself, it causes you to let things go, to make hard choices, to cut things out of your life, to change, right? And as I started to do that, I started to realize that my dad had a hard time doing that. He had a hard time cutting people out of his life. He had a hard time saying no. He had a hard time discerning between what was of God and positive and pure and what was not. He believed everyone was good, sometimes to his own detriment. And although he had a brilliant time manifesting money and spending it, he had a very hard time when it came to the human emotion element of personal development. I don't think my dad during this process ever really allowed himself to be the student in the ways that it mattered. In other words, he was really good at earning money and becoming successful and using this information to achieve things. He'd achieve a new income. He'd achieve a Bob Proctor award. He'd join a new business and become the number one person in the business. He would get a scuba diving license, get his pilot's license. Okay, my dad was a man who got stuff done, but a man that was also, I think, always afraid to look inward and have an honest conversation with himself about what he believed to be true for him when it came to the things that he really wanted in life. He really wanted love,
Mm.
and he chased it for a long time, relationship to relationship, married, divorced 3 times, businesses up, businesses down. And so, although he knew this stuff like the back of his hand and could help anyone master it and change their life, he was really turning a blind eye to a lot of things in his. And it got to a point where I was like, Dad, I love the way that you teach this stuff. I'm just different and I've got to fly on my own. And so before I turned 25, I actually left the business that we built together and I created my own brand. And it was all good. He was so proud of me. He was so excited for me. It broke my heart. I remember being on the call with him, bawling my eyes out, telling him that I was leaving because I knew that a big part of the joy in that business for him was doing it with myself. But I learned a lot. I left and I figured out entrepreneurship for myself at 24, 25. And I got to see it be like, okay, Maddie, you can do this on your own. It wasn't all dad's success because up until this point, I was just in business with my dad. I had never done it on my own. Network marketing with my dad, business with my dad. And so a very big part of me, and this was my wise woman or God, just kept nudging me, Maddie, you've got to fly. You've got to fly. You've got to fly. You've got to fly. And it would not go away. And I tried to suppress it so many times because I felt bad, honestly. And I was also scared. Can I do this by myself? Who the heck in their right mind would leave a multi-million-dollar business to go try and do it again on their own? Why would you do that? The
Right.
same business. Why would you do that? But this urge would not go away. And finally, and I will never forget this, I was sitting in my kitchen at the time in Atlanta, Georgia, and I had a solid meeting with myself. And I said, in 10 years, will I regret not leaving? And the answer was yes. And so I was like, okay, burn the ships. Let's go. I'm not going to live with regret. I'd rather fail and try than have regret in 10 years and wonder, what if I did? So I did. And I created a multi 6-figure business the first year. My dad went on to diversify like he always wanted to do. And I did not like. So he diversified into crypto, into trading, into different masterminds. And right, his business evolved with him and mine evolved with me. And during this time, because my dad and I had such a relationship with business and personal development, our relationship took a little bit of a backseat. My dad wasn't the kind of dad to just call and chit chat for no reason because his parents didn't do that with him. I've been with my dad 27 years and his parents never just called to check in. And so he didn't know to do that. And so when we left business together, our relationship shifted a little bit. And I started to watch my dad earn a lot of money. His income exploded. He spent a lot. I started seeing the things that I always wondered about my dad being magnified. So his spending habits, his choices of relationship. My dad was a big partier, never addiction or anything, but he loved to party and I always hated it. And I was really worried about him. One thing that was common for me my whole life was I worried about my dad. If my dad was not in a relationship with my mother, I was worried about him. They got back together. Spoiler, they got back together when I was in high school for 3 years and then split again. That was
Oh,
weird. Yeah.
yeah.
But I just was worried about him. I always was worried about him, just this innate feeling. Last year, 2023, January, he had a big financial hit. One of his investments that he had put millions of dollars in froze up overnight, and the cash flow coming in off of that also froze up overnight. Fast forward, his business and personal development became his number one stream of income again. And he was faced with making hard decisions, letting people go, consolidating, condensing, blah, blah, blah. But he didn't want to look at what he had to let go of or what he had to fix. This is a common theme. He just wanted different.
Mm.
So again, he would turn, and I know this in hindsight, right? But I also knew this while he was alive. I was like, why won't you just make the hard decision and let the person go? Come on, they're going to be fine. It's going to be better for you. It's going to be better for them, even though they don't know it yet. But he could not do this, seriously. And so he would be the last to be paid. Anyway, it was a financial domino. And my dad had put so much of his worth and his ability to achieve over the years and his ability to earn money over the years and provide for his family that when God, universe stripped that from him. He did not know how to handle life. If he couldn't pay for something, he had to have a hard conversation with us and tell us that he couldn't pay for the wedding right now, his only daughter. That was, I know that was hard for him. His pride, his ego. And so when you have so much worth in something, of your own self-worth in something, and it's gone, you're faced with what's left. And if you haven't faced that your whole life, you're in for a little bit of a ride, right? You've got to face demons within you if you've got them. You've got to face your insecurities within you if you've got them. And honestly, Mitzi, I was so excited for this season of my dad's life
Mm.
because I was like, finally, he was actually just coming around to God and building a relationship with God at this point. And I was like, you know what? Dad's going to go through a hard season, but it's going to humble the heck out of him. And he's going to reprioritize his life. He's going to make the hard decisions and he's going to come out on top and he's going to be a freaking badass. He's going to be the best version of my dad I have ever seen. That was my take on it.
Yeah.
And then fast forward on February 14th, 2023, it was a Wednesday. We woke up, I was in Sarasota, Florida, and there was a knock on the door and my mom walked in and it was just on her face. It was all over her face. I was just like, my dad's dead. And she was like, yeah. And I was like, he took his life. She was like, yep. And he said it was a dark season. It was really not a dark season. It was light and dark. But before we get into that's my dad. That's the story of my dad. Brilliant manifester, brilliant man, super big heart, would do anything for anyone. I don't believe he ever had the courage to really look at what was hurting him inside. And it caught up to him in the end when the money goes away, right? And as a man, as a father, you can't provide, you can't go on fancy trips, you can't inflate your insecurities. Now you're left with him, right? And he just did not know how to handle that. He would have rather decided to die than have gone through a humbling season in front of everyone. Before he passed 2 weeks, I actually knew. I literally knew that he wanted to leave. I called my mom. It's a whole story, but I called my mom. I called his dad. They both reached out to him because I just knew that he was suicidal. I knew he didn't want to do it anymore. I knew that he had crashed and burned and rebuilt so many times. This was going to be his fourth and the biggest one yet. And I knew that he didn't want to do it again. And if he was going to do it again, he'd have to walk through this really hard season. And I felt that he was not strong enough to do it. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that story. I'm sorry.
Yeah. It's a heavy one, right?
It really is. But I think the way that you describe it makes it everything you've been talking about come full circle because you mentioned in your steps, the first step, the number one thing you have to do is get to know yourself, to have that reckoning with yourself. And this isn't something you necessarily do once in your life. You do it. Like you said, your dad was going to be on his fourth time, and maybe he had never really truly gone through that step one, any of those times, but you may have to do it more than once in your life.
He was always focused on creating bigger goals, bigger things, bigger numbers. In the end, he realized a lot of this. His last year, we had conversations where I was like, oh my gosh, I've really got my dad with me in this conversation. There were so many times with my dad where he would tell me his goal or something, and I'd be like, why, Dad? Why? Or his choice in relationship, some things in it just didn't make sense. And I would ask him, Dad, how are you? Life's amazing. Life's awesome. When someone says life's amazing and you're like, is it?
Mm-hmm.
I always felt like that with my dad. And that's why I was always worried about him. I would see him doing all these amazing things, but then I'd be like, are you here with me? Are you present? And yeah, I think he was just always trying to achieve more to prove his worth instead of finding worth in himself through God, not material items and not flesh.
I think what you're talking about makes so much sense in terms of everything that you do you're about manifesting, you're about building the life you
Creation.
want, creation, co-creation. But what your dad was doing that, but it was like almost like building kind of a shell and not having the inner piece. Beautiful, if you picture an egg, this beautiful robin's egg blue, beautiful egg, but there's nothing inside. And
Yep.
you that is the piece to for people who are looking to manifest in their lives. That's the piece that is the crucial piece that allows you to have happiness and fulfillment.
I don't know if my dad ever knew what true joy was.
Mm,
Yeah. It was always something new that made him happy for a moment, but then it was on to the next.
yeah. As we're talking about him, what I'm feeling is that his role as a mentor and guide for others is something that he has now stepped into even more strongly now that his physical presence isn't here. I
Oh,
feel
yeah.
that. I actually feel that. I feel goosebumps when you're talking about him.
Yeah.
Like I think he's doing something really amazing that
Yes.
he has a strength now in wherever he is, whatever realm. I know he's probably all around us, but do you feel that?
Yeah. My dad, and that's why when you said you've been through a really dark season and now a really blissful season, it's all been really one season. And I don't even know that I could put a name on the tone of the season other than it's just life. It's life. And what I've learned before my dad passed, but especially after my dad passed, on that day, thank gosh, I already had a relationship with God. But I remember feeling so mad, so angry at my dad for not walking through the hard season. That was the
Mhm.
first thing that came to my mind was, gosh, dang it, dad. Like, what? You couldn't do it. Like, you just couldn't walk through it. Frank, you were going to be better than ever on the other side. Like, where's your faith? Like, I was so mad and angry at him. And then the other side of me was so sad and broken for him because I know what kind of place that his mind had to be in order to make that decision so permanently.
Mhm.
And then the other side of me started clinging to God
Mhm.
and just praying for peace, peace, because the human experience of a suicide can be very dark. I just wanted peace. And I wanted to know my dad still. And I wanted to have a relationship with my dad still. I did not want to remember him for taking his own life. And the day that he died was the most tragic day and the most beautiful day of my entire life. I actually saw my dad the day that he died in the form of an orb situation thing. And I am hesitant to tell this because I feel like most people don't, maybe won't believe it, but I'll tell it anyway. So my dad passed. I had about 3 hours of solid purging, what felt like emotionally. And then this resounding peace came over me that I was praying for through tears, through screams. I was praying for peace, the Holy Spirit to be one with me, the Holy Spirit to wrap its arms around me like a warm blanket. I just, I felt like that day I lost my earth father, but I like clung to my heavenly father, and my dad became one with that. And after the first stage of it subsided for that day, just pure peace came over us and me. And the sun was setting in Sarasota, Florida. And it was like golden hour in Dalton's Terrence apartment. It's gorgeous. It's white. It was like a golden hour. We're sitting on the couch and we're reminiscing about how awesome my dad was the same day that he died. Like he literally died 4 hours ago. And we were reminiscing about all the good things about him and how much of a handsome bastard he was, he called himself.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden, I saw this little circle that was orange and yellow and white move like 7 inches in front of me. And it was so profound that something on my face, like Dalton freaked out because of my reaction to this thing. Cause I was like, I think I just saw my dad. I just saw my dad. Like he's here. I just saw my dad. And so I've had just so many things that I could share. My dad is all around me. He's more with me than he's ever been, and he's lighter. My dad's presence is lighter than it's ever been before. While he was on earth, I was always worried about him.
It
And
seems I was gonna say it.
in
It
the end, he
seems
was like heavy. He was a heavy energy
yeah.
to be around, and I didn't know why.
You when you were talking about what your wish was for him and how you were thinking this is gonna be the best season
Yeah,
of his life, maybe it is.
It is. Oh, it absolutely is. But here's the thing, we shouldn't have to croak in order to realize that we're living in heaven on earth, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
0 out of 10
Absolutely.
recommend it. Dad, you were already in the kingdom, you could have realized everything
Uh,
here. Again, it's the journey, so
yeah.
there's really no right or wrong, everything just is, and we get to decide meaning, we get to put meaning on things. And I decided
Mhm.
that my dad's death was not gonna change me for the worse, it was not gonna be the darkest season of my life. There were dark moments, there were the darkest moments of my life, but I know too much about my dad and myself and God and what my dad would want for me to allow myself to fester in that's what the enemy wants. Enemy, negative energy. I'm not about that. It was a season of life. And then we got married a month and a half later, found out we were pregnant a month later. I was still grieving my dad through all of that. I was still building business through all of that. It was the most alive I've ever felt in my life. Yeah,
Wow.
because emotions are just, they have to be able to run through you. You have to be able to process things, but you don't want your emotions to steal away your spirit. Like, you don't want them to override your spirit and who you want to become. Like, I was not willing to allow the death of my dad to alter my life in a negative way. And I know he wouldn't want that anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an amazing story. And the way you tell it with such a maturity, there are people who just would not be able to have that kind of a point of view, who get
I know.
stuck in, like you say, get stuck in the emotions.
Or
You're
wondering
a
why.
Yeah, and you're just such a shining example for people who may have gone through something similar. I hope people can
I hope so.
can use your tools. You gave us so many beautiful tools. What's something that you wish for your daughter?
Aw. I will do my part in this for sure. I wish and hope that she has a very strong relationship with God from day one. I didn't. I'm only 2, 3 years into my relationship with Source, with God, and it's changed everything for me. It's allowed me to make hard decisions. It's allowed me to be brave, be courageous, step out in faith, and really shake things up. And that's something my dad didn't have for 54 years. So I wish that she has healthy, happy parents for a long time. I wish that she has a strong marriage to look up to, because my dad didn't have that and I didn't have that. Although I had amazing parents, I didn't have an example.
Mhm.
So I wish she has that. But most importantly, I wish and pray and hope that she learns how to talk to God very early in her life.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
I can't wait to see this beautiful being that's
I know.
coming into the world this
Me
year.
neither.
She'll be like a little angel. I love
I
it.
know. She's an angel baby.
Oh, she is. So, because it's the Blessings podcast, I have to ask you, what is your biggest lesson in life?
My biggest lesson in life, from in my experience, from heartbreak to miscarriages to your father committing suicide to failure to being discouraged. There's nothing in life that's ever that bad that is worth you giving it all your power.
Mm.
There's nothing in life that is ever that bad. My biggest lesson is that pursuing God, pursuing your relationship with God, source, your higher self, whatever you want to call it, above all else, above your wife, above your husband, above your children, above your job, above money. My biggest lesson is that if you learn to idolize the world and the material over God, it's going to be a really bumpy ride. And the faster you can idolize God above everything, the more safer you're going to feel, the more grounded you will feel, the better decisions that you will make, the more fearless you will be, the more connected, the more divinely guided you will be. There is nothing on this physical plane that is worth dumping your value into more than God is. And that's my biggest lesson.
Beautiful. And
Yeah.
what about your biggest blessing?
Blessing.
Yes.
I have to be my baby girl, probably.
Of course.
But maybe my husband, because if I didn't have him, I wouldn't have her.
That's right. Aw.
Yeah,
And
so
he's
it's probably my
fantastic.
husband.
Yeah,
Yeah, he
Dalton,
actually
such a
just
great
walked in.
guy. Oh, hi, Dalton.
Yeah, he's
I hope I get to see you guys next time in New York. And,
Yes.
yeah, we'll have to keep in touch. I'm super excited for you. Thank you for joining me today. This has been an amazing conversation. Amazing.
Thank you, Mitzi. It's
Yeah,
my
blew me
pleasure.
away. Yeah.
Thank you for your time. And we'll see you soon.